I think a handful of my colleagues up here need to check their privilege. Immigration is vitally important to our country, and when you look on a global scale, there's a war happening in Gaza.
Well, the day has finally arrived where Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the opposition, is in the debate for his riding. This is probably the only debate that's going to take place for this by-election, and it's been an absolute disaster just with how Elections Canada has handled it. So the longest ballot has turned out to be 209 confirmed candidates in this riding of Battle River Crowfoot. The largest ballot I think that's ever existed, at least here in Canada. I'm pretty sure I'm right on that, but I could be wrong. It got so big that Elections Canada finally had to do something about it. So instead of having a 7-foot long ballot, which would require not just to hide behind the little cardboard cutouts that they do so you can take your little ballot and circle in the name of your preferred candidate, you would have had to have probably your own dedicated room, which is logistically a little bit of a nightmare for them to try to pull off. 7 foot, taller than any person any of us have ever really seen. I mean, you see a really tall person, they're like 6'9", 6'10". You're like, wow, are you a basketball player or a volleyball player? And they're like, I get that a lot. 7 feet plus long. Absolutely insane. Got so out of hand that Elections Canada stepped in and said, you know what, we're going to make a special ballot. So instead of you circling the name, multiple choice of which candidate you prefer, you're going to have to write down the person's name and or party. And I mean, that gets a little weird because if you have spelling errors, it could potentially, make your vote ineligible. But as long as the person who's reading it can clearly distinguish what you were aiming for, then it gets counted. And that's left up to the interpretation of the different people that are basically collecting the ballots, right? The scrutineers. And so that can get tricky and potentially malicious depending on interpretation. But for the most part, it's not that bad so long as you can spell the person's name. So how Elections Canada normally does this, and this is something I experienced when I voted in the federal election, is they print off the names of the candidates running. So I voted for my riding, but I'm out of my riding. So I had a special ballot. The staff accommodated that by printing off the names and the parties of the people that I could vote for. And so that simplified things a lot for me. So that's pretty much what's going to happen with Battle River Crowfoot, which I guess is better than having a 7+ foot long ballot. But that's not what we're talking about tonight. Tonight, we're talking about the debate. The debate where only 10 candidates, I guess, have registered, and all 10 candidates have been approved for the debate. It's a pretty big debate. I mean, 10 candidates, I think even in federal election, there was four or five people. So 10 for a by-election is pretty big. So that's what Pierre Poilievre is doing in this video, is his debate. So I hope you stick around for the full thing to listen to the talking points. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I really want to encourage y'all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. And I hope you're ready for the debate highlights. Without further ado, here we go.
Good evening, everybody. I would like to echo Grant's comments, thanking the Chamber of Commerce for putting this together and allowing us to have this time to discuss things all in one place without any spin or tall tales told. Myself, I am running as an independent. I don't have a party because I firmly believe that party politics are damaging the Canadian politiscape. We are not American. We are not a two-party system. And while I may have run as a centrist with conservative leanings, I firmly believe that the Conservative Party of Canada has lost its way, and I fully intend on standing up for my neighbors. When our previous guy sells us out to let a guy from Ottawa come in, that is not right. I firmly believe that we need somebody here who understands our local issues, who understands the issues of right to repair, who understands that we do need proper oil sands development. Yes, I saw you there. I'm well aware where you are. We do need proper oil sands development. We need proper investment towards our farmers, and we need the federal government to wake up and pay attention outside the western border of Ontario. So that is who I am. And that is what I am here for. I am here to stand up only for my neighbors. My voice, your words. I don't have anything else to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much to the chamber. Thank you to the fellow candidates, though I think that there are about 190 of them that are missing. Maybe that's the audience out there. But in all truthfulness, thank you to those who are putting their names forward, and thank you to the great Damien Couric, who's given me the chance to speak for the people of Canada and for Battle River Crowfoot. But most of all, thank you to Battle River Crowfoot, the region that feeds, powers, and protects this country. Feeds through the great ranchers and farmers, powers through the ingenious energy workers, and protects through the brave soldiers at CFB Wainwright. Makes me proud to be an Albertan. Now, in fairness, I'm from Calgary, born and raised, and Calgary's a little ways from Camrose, but there's a lot of shared values across this province and across this country. And my Alberta values taught me about faith, family, and freedom, hard work, helping your neighbors, and those values guided me to fight for the values of this region when I was leader of the party and member of parliament over a couple of decades, that I forced the Liberal government to get rid of their carbon tax, which is a local issue in rural communities, forced the debate on developing our resources, slowing down out-of-control immigration, cracking down on drugs and crime. And now I want to take the local issues and provide national leadership to fight against the electric vehicle mandate, because driving a pickup truck is a local issue in the communities across this region. To fight for law-abiding firearms owners, to fight for farmers, and to expand our military. These are local issues that require national leadership, and it would be a privilege to provide.
I'll tell you what, I think we need to look at immigration, because our young people can't get jobs because new immigrants are subsidized in all of the entry-level jobs. Let's start there. Let's start by talking about making sure we don't have flights to Amritsar back and forth, because we do have an immigration problem. It is driving up our housing prices. We had a long time Mr. Poilievre telling us that there was no link between demand and supply in our housing and or the immigration issue. We simply have to look at that. I know this question is about the economy, but let's start in terms of where our kids and our grandchildren are in terms of trying to get on the ladder. There are many things that we need to fix. We need to repatriate our industrial base to this country. We need to incentivize entrepreneurship again, and we need to stop the flight of funds out of this country. The problem is that our people are leaving this country because we have deeper problems that we never talk about in this nation, and it's rooted in post-nationalism.
Basing our economy off of immigration numbers, not a good idea. But before we worry about our economy, we need to worry about our government spending. When the federal government is bloated and sending out third-party contracts such as Veterans Affairs, contracting out care of veterans to Loblaws, we need to deal with it. The bloating has to stop. We need our middle managers to actually leave instead of just cutting the teeth. We also need our MPs to stop spending excessive amounts of money when we have one person who spends more than the next two of your money. Then we can look at cutting our taxes and making our employment that much easier to manage.
Thank you, Bonnie. Michael.
So first and foremost, we need to get rid of the welfare state. Main issues number one is that this government is spending way too much money. We are both in debt and in a deficit at the same time, where we are making no money. At the same time, we are paying the highest amount of taxes that we have ever paid in our entire life. So we need to be lowering the amount that our government is spending. I see all the time where money is being wasted in random projects across the country where they're not actually going towards the services that are needed here in this riding. And to top on to that, after we got the welfare state, we need to get rid of all taxes here in this country, starting at the income tax level, going towards business taxes, because you pay taxes on everything that you do, whether it be on your paycheck, when you go to the store, driving your car, anything. You are paying taxes, and we want to fight to get rid of as many as possible.
The cause of inflation is government. Cost, yes, it's very simple. Supply and demand. The government is boosting demand and limiting supply. They're boosting demand through out-of-control immigration and money printing that adds more money and people than new products for them to buy. And they're restricting the supply of things by blocking everything from home building to natural resource development. So what's the solution? We need to cut back on immigration. In fact, we need to have negative population growth for the next several years as more people leave than come. We need to slash bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, corporate welfare, and handouts to fraudulent refugees. And we need to unlock our resources to produce cheap energy and affordable homes. So let's produce more stuff rather than adding more people and more money.
Well, I think Jonathan said it best, controlled immigration. It definitely needs to slow down. We are not in a position right now to take care of our own, much less other people. But again, before we can look at immigration and costs, we need to deal with our government bloat before we can deal with immigration. We need to deal with all those middle managers who give immigrants stacks of paper this big when they are doctors, they are the skills we are desperately needing, but our government fails to acknowledge their skills, their education. Yes, we need to slow down immigration. Stopping it entirely is a bad thing. Not acknowledging the skill sets that people bring to continue to deal with our country and the issues we've got is also something that needs to be dealt with. We gotta cut the government bloat, then we can afford to feed everybody.
I agree, and we did it right for 150 plus years, whether it was the frontier pioneers who came and settled the prairies, or the great Italians and Portuguese who came and built roads and founded families across Canada, or my wife who came as a refugee. Her dad picked fruit in a farm field so that he could pay the rent, and now they're a successful story. But over the last 10 years, the Liberals have adopted a post-nationalist ideology, they call it the Century Initiative, to triple our population, to favor globalist interests and multinational corporations at our expense. They've driven down wages with excess temporary foreign workers, with abusing the international student program and allowing fraudulent and often criminal arrivals to come in and abuse our system. That abuse must stop. We must have more people leaving than coming over the next several years as we bring down our population, allow our health care, our housing, our job market.
I think a handful of my colleagues up here need to check their privilege. Immigration is vitally important to our country, and when you look on a global scale, there's a war happening in Gaza, in Ukraine, and significant unrest in the United States. Where will these people be able to go? We should be welcoming people here in Canada. We should allow them to come here, and that doesn't mean that there won't be programs or services for everyone else. It's not pie. It doesn't mean that it's cut and they get everything and you get nothing. That's not the way it works. Canada is vast. There's more than enough area. This riding is vast. It takes me 8 hours just to get across it. There's more than enough space. And if anything, the farmers need hands. Every farmer I spoke to needs help.
I'm going to stand up here because my legs are sore. Well, I'll say this. My family is an immigrant family. We pioneered land about 125 miles from here, and I'm a very proud Western Canadian. I'll tell you this. You guys are being sold a bill of goods here tonight from Mr. Poilievre because he's talking to you about unleashing our energy sector. I would like to know how Mr. Poilievre is going to do that when he refuses to tell us whether he'll leave the UN climate accord that completely restricts our carbon. I would like to know about inflation. Inflation is government. No. Inflation is government debt. And the reason we have lost 40% of our spending in this nation is because of rampant spending that is destabilizing our country. And that is exactly why we have a US president looking at a post-national government that is careening towards destruction. We need to have deeper.
I absolutely 100% agree. If you want to run for an area, you need to live here. This longest ballot crap, that's got to stop. We need one person who will be the official agent. That way we don't have one person sponsoring 200 people. But first and foremost, you don't know what's going on here unless you live here. As for government accountability, I absolutely would use my position as a swing vote within a minority government to push for government accountability. I want to release everybody's spending. Thank you very much.
Look, I'll be honest, having a leader of a political party as your local member of parliament is a trade-off. On the one hand, the leader, in truth, lives in hotel rooms, in low-budget hotel rooms across the country. I can assure you, they live in St. John's, Newfoundland one night, and in Sault Ste. Marie the next, and maybe Port Alberni after that. At the other side, though, is that leader can bring a very powerful megaphone to the local issues of the community. For example, getting a pipeline built from Hardisty over to Prince Rupert or to Kitimat, that is a local issue that requires national leadership. Protecting your right to own a hunting rifle, that is a local issue that requires national leadership. Fixing the prison in Drumheller is a local issue that needs national leadership. I will provide that strong.
Thank you, Pierre.
I think the people of Battle River and Crowfoot are interested in the truth. The truth is the Conservative Party voted for Bill C-4 that will criminalize you if you stop your child transitioning. Each of you will go to jail for 5 years. Pierre Poilievre talks about faith, family, and freedom. That's a sham. And I think the other conversation we continue to need to have is what is really going on. What's going on in this country is that our sovereignty is being betrayed on a national level, and the only response is the people of Alberta that have the faith, the resiliency, the strength, the wealth, and the grit to actually stand up to the selling out of the nation. And so while we're talking about this tonight, remember, we are talking about two Canadas, because what's happening in this country is a pandering to Ontario and Quebec to get this gentleman elected, and you're paying the price. That's what's going on.
Quite frankly, it's the Liberal government in Ottawa that has denigrated our healthcare system. To start with the out-of-control population growth of particularly the last 5 years, our ratio of patient to doctor is now worse than it's ever been. We need to cap immigration to ensure that we can add doctors and nurses faster than we add people. Second, we need to grow our economy faster because our federal healthcare transfer grows at the same rate as our economy. And that means unleashing our resources, and lowering taxes, and making our economy stronger. And third, we have 20,000 immigrant doctors, 32,000 immigrant nurses who cannot work because they can't get a license. We have a red seal that's already in place for the trades, a national license for the licensed trades. We should do the same thing with a blue seal based on a high standard that immigrant doctors can take a test, prove they're qualified, and get to work in our hospital.
Thank you, Pierre. Darcy.
Thank you. I love the Canadian healthcare system. I've been a user of it my entire life, except for when I was out of the country, and I think we have the greatest system on earth. And frankly, the present government and the work they're doing to make sure it's consistently across all the provinces is a lot of work, and I'm happy the way it's working. Myself, I have 2 new knees brought to me by the Alberta system, and I want to ensure that if I live in New Brunswick or Ontario, as a Canadian, I want to make sure I have consistency. So to me, the system as a whole needs to continue as it is, and get better with time because it is one of the best in the world. I've lived out of the country a couple times in the United States and come back into our system, and I can say our system, given that we have our neighbors to the south with theirs, is certainly a preferred system for me. Thank you.
Well, I find it very interesting that we're speaking about a provincial issue in a federal election debate. I'd remind you that the only relevant issue in a discussion about our healthcare in Alberta is the fact that we're submitting equalization payments to Ottawa, and we're dropping about $10 to $12 billion a year. If we actually had that money, we could have an amazing healthcare system, and where that money's going is to support the broken infrastructure within this nation and to prop up Ontario and Quebec. So if you really want to talk about a healthcare system that's working, let's actually look at where that money's going that's from Alberta. And I celebrate our healthcare system. I celebrate the universal healthcare system. It's led the world. But let's be real about the economics of this, because it's equalization that's the problem here. And the country's broken, and we are going down the drain economically. Inflation is because we're burdened with debt, and there's no plan.
Well, first off, I want to pull everybody's attention to the fact that Monsieur Poilievre totally skipped the accountability portion of the government accountability question. But carrying on, I do appreciate that he reiterated my point about immigration and not the Canadian government not accepting the governments and the qualifications of people. However, healthcare is provincial. I hate to say it, I want to help, I want to fix it, it's provincial. I personally would love to see it go federal, because I've gone province to province to province with my job, and suddenly the things I can do in Alberta, I can't do in Saskatchewan, I can't do in BC, I can't do in New Brunswick. I would like to see it come back provincial so that we do not have individuals such as Ms. Smith completely selling us out.
So there's a couple big takeaways that I've taken from this debate so far. One is the lighting makes everybody look like they're in some movie where they're trying to be like a villain and you can't even see their eyes and it's super dark in there. Like, that piece is a little strange. It's interesting to see, because the federal election was so recent, how everything was bright, and this is like a high school spelling bee. So that's pretty interesting. And then the other big takeaway is the reoccurring theme of pretty much all candidates have a unanimous bad person that they're going after, at least in their minds. And that would be Pierre Poilievre, or specifically even just the Conservative Party. Most people that had the opportunity to answer questions in full and get their points across without running out of time, use that time before that little bell rang to take aim at Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party to some varying degree. Maybe not everybody, but so many of the candidates did. And that's only out of the 100, we're crying out loud, the 10 candidates that spoke. Again, as Pierre said, there's 190 candidates that didn't show up to the debate. So I want to know what you guys think down below in the comments. When you look at the reaction from the crowd, from the replies, Bonnie did get a good amount of applause and positive reaction from the crowd. But the winner, I guess, would be Pierre Poilievre. I mean, there was way more applause, way more enthusiasm for Pierre to speak, his talking points. And so that just goes to show that it seems like even though him parachuting in as a candidate is a bit of a controversial matter, there's still a tremendous amount of support for Pierre and the Conservative Party and what he and the party represents in whole for Battle River Crowfoot. So I just kind of want to pass the question off to you. How do you feel about the debate? Do you think it was good? Do you think it was bad? I mean, obviously I had to make some cuts I couldn't let everybody speak, but get a load of that NDP chick, huh? There's some candidates who have a sense of entitlement and then proceeds to talk about Gaza. Come on, Battle River Crowfoot does not care about Gaza as a top priority or any real priority. I mean, I can't speak on behalf of people there, but I am in this instance. Oops, guilty. Anyways, love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in another one. This wasn't the entire debate, by the way. This is all I could get out the night of the debate before I just shut everything down and spent some time with my family. But nonetheless, it was as much as I could fit into this video. Thanks for watching. See you guys later. Bye.